PC Peri here, a founding member of Flying Focus Video Collective, welcoming you to the Flying Focus 24th Busiversary. We began producing video as a tool for social change in 1991, during the so-called Gulf War, also known as the Massacre in the Middle East. Over the years, we created hundreds of programs covering activist speakers, visionaries, forums, street protests, and other difficult-to-find information.
And I'm Dan Handelman, also a co-founding member of Flying Focus. We try to cover topics on our half-hour weekly program that don't get any time on the corporate media, such as peace, police accountability, animal rights, economic, environmental, and social justice. This show marks 24 years since November 18, 1991, when the Flying Focus Video Bus premiered. We use this annual retrospective so our volunteer producers and videographers can come out from behind the scenes to talk about their programs. You'll see clips from 13 shows, which are made up of 24 episodes that were produced between November 2014 and October 2015.
We hope our show proves to you that the content of what you see on television does not need to sink to the lowest common denominator. Our videos don't look professional because we're focused on the content, over and above the slick production values. To learn how to make TV, join us. Grab something now to capture this information.
If you want to get involved, call us at 503-239-7456 or 503-321-5051, or write to us at ffvc@flyingfocus.org.
While our programs can still be seen on cable access, clips from many of our shows and some full episodes are streaming on the web at flyingfocus.org. For many years, I've been field coordinator for Flying Focus. I was involved in taping, supporting, coaching videographers of 10 of this year's 13 shows. And I produced 2 shows this year, both from the same event tying together issues of First Nation rights and Palestinian rights, held in February of 2015. The first show features 3 of the panelists from the event. You will hear from Kanahus Manuel, a First Nation person from Canada, describing her community's efforts to keep their land. Then Cecily Saraski of Jewish Voice for Peace describes her experience at an Israeli checkpoint where she was leaving the Palestinian territories. The last speaker is Dr. Michael Yellowbird from the University of South Dakota, who talks about his classification as a savage. All made possible with the help of new volunteer, Dawn Regier, in helping us get things set up.
My name is Kanahus Beshki. It means red woman in Tanakha. I'm also from the Tanakha Nation from my mother's side, which is also in so-called British Columbia. Our area in so-called British Columbia is here on this map. You can see the shaded in area. That's our nation. We call this our nation Secwepemc Uluch. It's one of the biggest territories in so-called British Columbia. We're battling with many different industries right now in our homelands. Mining and pipelines are bombarding our homelands, and Native people are feeling like we're being backed into the corner, but we're like mother bears. When you back us too much in the corner and you threaten the future of our children, we're going to fight back and we're going to attack. And that's the mentality that we have right now. The women have said it's a state of emergency in our homelands, and it's the women that are standing up on the front lines. And they're using industry and they're using mining, and they're trying to take the last of our remaining resources from our territory. And we need people out in the world to know that this is happening, that Canada is occupying our homelands, and that we need support as well.
I had my suitcase, and a young soldier with a gun looked at the suitcase and said, "Why do you have this?" And I said, "Oh, I've just been here for the week, and now I'm going to go to Jerusalem and go to the airport and go home." And he said, Ramallah is garbage. Why are you in Ramallah? You should be in Jerusalem." And it was an amazing experience for me, because what I realized was that he literally, physically could not see the people in front of him. This world, this whole universe that was literally feet away, that would open up everything for him. To him, he had been raised to have the eyes of the colonizer.
I share a common identity with the people of the Middle East. I, too, am considered a savage. My people were considered savages when U.S. President Andrew Jackson was killing Indians in 1820. I was a savage when Hollywood actor John Wayne was killing Indians in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. I was a savage in 2011 when President Barack Obama and his closest advisors sat at Camp David and listened to Navy SEALs kill Osama bin Laden and then referred to the operation as codename Geronimo.
The next clip is from a separate program taped at the same event, with speaker Omar Barghouti talking about Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, or BDS. This has been one of the most successful efforts to expose ordinary people to the long-lasting occupation of Palestine. BDS makes citizens worldwide consider whether the goods they buy are being produced by people with no say in their governance. He emphasizes how Americans' tax money is being used to support the unjust system of Israeli apartheid, adding, "It's our moral responsibility to do something."
I'll share with you some thoughts about the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, how it started, what its aims are, and how it connects to some of the discussion that's been taking place tonight. Roosevelt said, "A conquest may be fraught with evil or with good for mankind according to the comparative worth of the conquering and conquered peoples." End of quote. So savages fits right there. In a nutshell, Jabotinsky was basically saying that Zionism has to defeat hope in the colonized nation, the Palestinians, in order to force an agreement on them. You cannot get their consent to accept colonization. No one accepts colonization. People are not stupid, actually, he says. He says those so-called liberal Zionists are very racist. They think Arabs are dumb and we can bribe them. They cannot be bribed. Like any colonized nation, they will resist us. So we've got to kill their hope with massive power. And the Iron Wall strategy of Jabotinsky lives on till today in Zionism. But it has taken many shapes, from the concrete wall in the occupied territory to the metaphorical wall that Israel has built in our minds. Yes, we are calling for a full boycott of Israel, academically, culturally, economically, financially. Why should any American care? Well, there are many reasons. Today, as South African jurist John Dugard said, Palestine has become the litmus test for human rights in today's world. As South Africa was in the 70s and 80s, today it's Palestine. This is at the front line of our collective struggles against empire, against corporations, against the pillage of the resources of the world. Second, because it's your tax money, mainly, that has enabled Israel to continue and expand its regime of oppression against the Palestinians, our oppression has "Made in the USA" written all over it. That engenders a responsibility.
This year I produced 4 shows, but I also provided editing assistance on all 13 shows. I often focus on war and peace issues, the topics that brought our group together in the first place. My first program was taped by Alan Evans, who's here helping direct the show tonight. It features a panel discussion held in September 2014 that tied together the issues of the U.S. wars in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, and elsewhere, climate change, and the economy. I actually helped organize the event as a member of another group, Peace and Justice Works. Because we don't have much time, these clips don't include a few of the speakers, Jenka Soderberg of KBOO and economics professor Robin Hanel. You will hear from Amin Wahab, who just returned from 6 months working on the water sector in Afghanistan, Ari Lavallee, an Iraq war veteran who opposes the wars, and Maya Rotem, an Israeli-American activist concerned with the U.S. support for Israel's occupation of Palestine, and also Lenny D., a climate change organizer.
The amount of funding for development that has gone to Afghanistan since 2001 is now the largest funding for development in the history of the U.S. Basically, it's bigger than the Marshall Fund, for the reconstruction of Germany. But you also have seen probably from a lot of media reports and some of the reports coming directly from the government, SIGAR, that's the Special Inspector General for the reconstruction of Afghanistan, that there's not a lot to really show for in terms of reconstruction in Afghanistan.
A lot of us veterans, we feel like we've already stepped up, and we still feel that way. I guess to where we are, you know, in Iraq and Syria, yeah, new sound just like the old sound. You know, what else? What else is there to say? You know, like, I could go into depth about, you know, us destabilizing Libya, and that a lot of those people that we were assisting with Saudi and, you know, the help of Gulf states that we fund and support, you know, with weapons and training, you know, to suppress their own people, but also to fight the war in Libya, to get rid of Gaddafi, that we helped fund, you know, the movement of those arms through Turkey to fund the war that's going on now in Syria.
The training, I think, is another example of how this type of connection between Israel and the U.S. is so harmful for people on both places, because we're seeing more and more American police being trained by Israeli army or police. And so after decades of perfecting the best ways to maintain and control civilian population, Israel is now exporting these methods to be used on vulnerable populations here.
And the money machine goes wherever it needs to make money. And if it can make more money on solar, it's going to go there. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on it. If we build the movement, we can make this happen. So I really encourage you folks, there's over 1 million Oregonians that are very concerned about climate. That's a base we can build on to build this movement.
The one thing that I will remember from this evening is from what Brother Ian said, and I'm a man of the cloth, so I'm going to clean it up. Figure it out, but effing do something.
That was Reverend Cecil Prescott summing things up there at the end of that program. The next program is the second one I produced this year, and it also focused on U.S. foreign policy, but it was taped at a different Peace and Justice Works event. This one features the analyst Phyllis Bennis from the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and she ran her own camera in Washington while we were listening to her on a live stream over the internet here in Portland. The live streaming was set up by Myunjin Cakes, but his images of the room didn't really show up much on the program. On the other hand, PC taped live and made it possible for us to have audio on the program, so that was very helpful. Bennis recently published a primer about the war on ISIS and outlined her multi-point plan to stop the wars in Syria and Iraq, and she summarized her plan in her very informative and inspiring talk. Here she's focusing on moving U.S. policy away from military solutions and looking at how bombing other countries causes blowback.
There's a pattern here that becomes very, very problematic. That terrible regimes come to power, that part is true. Enormous human rights violations are committed against civilians, and that is true. And the U.S. says that the only thing we can do, because we must do something, is to go to war. And that's the part that's not true. There is never only one option. It's never true that the only choice is to do nothing or go to war. There are always alternatives, and the challenge for us as civil society in a so-called democracy where our public opinion, our views for Congress doesn't always matter very much. The challenge for us is to somehow reclaim that democracy that our Constitution is supposed to guarantee and make sure that those other alternatives are what become the go-to position first. They are what should be the default position. What we see right now is a situation where we hear over and over again from President Obama, from Secretary of State Kerry, from half of Congress, saying there is no military solution. And the answer is, yeah, you think? That's the one thing they're saying these days that's true. So they say, well, we need the military, but we also need to convince Iraqi Sunnis, for instance, to stop supporting ISIS. Well, that makes sense. But the problem is, every time you go in bombing ISIS and you cheer because, yay, we got the bad guys, what the Iraqi Sunnis see is not, yay, we got the bad guys, but, wow, once again, the U.S. is bombing in the interest of the Shia against the Sunnis, defending the Shia and the Kurds. So what are we, the Sunnis, supposed to do? Maintain our alliance with ISIS. So they're undermining even their own claimed effort by carrying out military campaigns. Because at the end of the day, this is failing now and it's going to fail in the future because you can't bomb extremism out of existence.
PC Peri here. with volunteer Barb Greene, and she's going to tell us how long she's been with Flying Focus.
Yes, I've been with Flying Focus now. This month is my 20-year anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
And can I just say what a long, strange trip it's been.
Well, join us.
Yes, no, actually it's been great. I joined because I wanted to do animal rights work.
Mm-hmm. And you've done that.
And I have done some of that. I've also met an awful lot of wonderful people, such as yourself and our wonderful crew, learned a lot of things, and hopefully got some information out there that people can take some action on.
That's great.
Yeah, so speaking of information...
This year, what did we do together? Oh, wait a minute, I ran camera, and you edited something about VegFest.
Yeah, it was Sharon Palmer, a dietitian, talking at VegFest about plant-powered nutrition.
Right.
So she talks in this clip about the benefits of a plant-powered or vegetarian or vegan diet.
Okay.
And then she lists the nutrients that it's important for people who eat plants, like vegans especially, what nutrients they need to pay attention to.
The dietary guidelines for Americans, comes from the government. This is the official recommendation from the government. They, for the first time, have talked about vegetarian health benefits. So they say that vegetarian diets are linked with lower levels of obesity, reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, lower mortality, lower blood pressure, and lower BMI. And then the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the organization of dietitians and nutrition professionals, I'm part of that organization. They are very conservative about their consensus statements, and this is a position from their organization that vegetarian diets are linked with a lower risk of death from ischemic heart disease, lower LDL cholesterol, and that's the bad cholesterol, lower blood pressure, lower rates of hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. And then the Adventist Health Study, too, is a landmark study that's been published in the last couple of years. More and more data is coming out from this study. They analyzed in 96,000 individuals. They studied these 5 diet patterns. They studied non-vegetarian, semi-vegetarian, pescatarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, and vegan. And then they looked at all these different health outcomes. Who does the best when it comes to cancer? Who did the best when it comes to type 2 diabetes and heart disease? And they found a linear relationship for almost everything they looked at. So a linear relationship means you could draw a straight line, with vegan being the lowest risk and non-vegetarian being the highest risk. And this is really a landmark trial that we can really go back to show these amazing health benefits. So with all of this stuff coming together, we can really, have a very confident stance that eating a plant-based diet is great for human health. And also the environmental benefits. We're getting to see more and more some of these benefits in the mainstream. Studies have shown consistently that an organic vegan diet has the lowest environmental impact. And many, many studies have shown this. A conventionally farmed diet with a high amount of meat has the largest impact. Data shows that plant-based diets have a few nutrients we have to be more careful with. That includes protein, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B12, calcium, vitamin D, iron, zinc, and iodine.
PC Peri here again, talking to new volunteer JT. So we were just talking about Sharon Palmer and diet. And now we're going to be talking about Paul Shapiro, Eating for the Planet. Do you remember that show?
I do. I edited it.
Yes.
And it was interesting to see how the ecological impact on a person that community's diet may have.
Right.
And one of the things that caught my attention, too, was like all the resources that are used to make a simple hamburger.
Scary.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that clip.
That's good.
The United Nations is so adamant on this point that it says, when it talks about World Water Day, the annual holiday dedicated to celebrating water conservation, the number one thing that you can do, minimal meat, the United Nations is saying, replace meat with another source of protein is the number one thing that we can each do to help conserve water. In fact, academics looking at this said managing the demand for animal products by promoting a dietary shift away from a meat-rich diet will be an inevitable component in the environmental policy of governments. This is not just a personal responsibility issue. This is an issue that requires some amount of government involvement to ensure that we have policies that help move us toward healthier and more sustainable diets, rather than the policies that we have in place now, which push us toward unhealthy and unsustainable meat-centric diets. Some people will rebut. They'll say, well, actually local is what we need to be focused on, not so much whether it's plant or animal, but whether it's local. Anybody think that that is possibly true? In fact, the number of miles that food travels is such an insignificant part of the total carbon footprint of that food product that there are a multitude of ways, including things like what method of cooking we use, that have far more environmental impact than the number of miles the product traveled. Don't take my word for it. Take researchers from Carnegie Mellon, who did the study looking at how much carbon footprint you could save by going local or by just going vegan for 1 day a week. Shifting less than 1 day per week's worth of calories to a vegetable-based diet achieves more greenhouse gas reduction than buying all locally sourced food. What are we to do? Well, let's look at what Bill Gates is arguing that we should be doing. Bill Gates on his Facebook page says, by 2030, the world will need millions of tons more meat than it does today because we're going to have a lot more people on the planet. But meeting that demand with animal products isn't sustainable, and he is putting his own money into companies that are investing in plant-based solutions to these problems. Companies like Beyond Meat and Hampton Creek, which are producing foods made out of plants that mimic animal products like chicken or like eggs, so that we can have those same products but without all of the environmentally catastrophic problems that are associated with current forms of animal production today.
That does it for part 1 of the Flying Focus Video Collective. 24th Busiversary. I'm PC Peri of the Flying Focus Video Collective.
And I'm Dan Handelman. To get involved and or support us in any way, you can call us at 503-239-7456 or check for showtimes at 503-321-5051. You can also write to us at ffvc@flyingfocus.org.
Flying Focus is an all-volunteer, nonprofit group funded by donations and video orders. We'd love to have you be part of this. Write down the contact information and join us.
We like to demystify TV and how it's made, so you can make it too. Here's our crew in the studio tonight. In the booth we have Moss and Frank and George. Hi guys, thanks for your help. We also have Daniel W. and Daniel D. and Alva, Jim T. and Jim L. And a few of these people aren't necessarily here. You also see some of our producers are working on the crew tonight.
The access facility we use, Portland Community Media, is here for the public to access the airwaves. PCM has been our home for 24 years. Come make it yours too.
Thanks for watching, and tune in next week at the same time for part 2.